Hey everybody, welcome back to another monthly update for MALEDICTOR. Let's go ahead and jump on into this one because I've been busy this month. So first off, we've got more sprites. Just, always more sprites. You always need more. I could spend an entire day just doing nothing but sprites and I would still have to make more the next day. Next up, fixed broken E1M1 geometry. There was some spots where they weren't quite lining up. The floor wasn't quite flush to the wall, so I had to fix some areas like that, but fortunately there weren't too many. Fixed moving wall travel time. That was kind of an odd one. They would start to, if you would activate a secret wall, then it would start to move really slowly and then suddenly shoot down. So I found a way to make that consistent, and it was basically what I had to do with the elevators to make it travel at a constant rate. So got that working, and now it's pretty good. Added coyote time into the game, and coyote time, for people who don't know, is basically think of Wile E. Coyote when he runs off a cliff, how he kind of just hovers there for a bit. So it's when you look down at the ground, approaching the edge of a cliff or a drop off or whatever, and it's how far out you can walk before you actually fall off. And that's pretty simple. You just kind of move the camera a little bit forward in the collision cylinder. So the reason why it's useful is because even though it doesn't actually change the mechanics of jumping, it allows people to get a better idea of when they need to jump. Because if you're technically having them jump a little early, so that they're less likely to fall off of a platform. And so that just makes platforming feel a little bit better. I'm not really planning on a whole lot of platforming in this game because I personally really hate platforming in first-person shooter games. But it does make levels more interesting. So once we actually do add in a little bit of platforming here and there, then it should feel a lot better than if I hadn't changed the coyote time. Removed blink and dash. I was really kind of struggling with which one I wanted to keep into the game, is which one felt better. They were both good for certain things, but as I started playing the game a little bit more and testing it more, I realized that I just didn't use either of them. And I figured if I wasn't using either of them, then probably nobody else really would either. So I got rid of them, but we do still have some more advanced movement mechanics. Just, they'll come along a little bit later in these notes here, but it feels a lot more kind of classic FPS movement now, which I kind of much prefer. Adjusted enemy behavior. So one of the big things for this month was trying to polish up the game a little bit for GDWC to submit it to that. And one of the things about that was, you need to have a little polish added into the first two levels, and then added in a little bit more polish into the enemies and tweak some balance a little bit. I think it's still really early on to be messing with balance all that much, but it kind of is what it is. It was necessary, but so the enemies are definitely not where I want them to be, but they're a little bit closer, and it never hurts to get a little bit of extra work in at really any point. It's not like I'm gonna have to go back and remove what I did, so I'm not gonna have to. At least as far as I'm aware, I don't think I'm gonna have to completely redo enemy behavior. We'll see though. Next, adjusted footsteps. Just fixed a bug with them, really. Improved performance on E1M1 is kind of just what it sounds like. E1M3, a lot more work on that. I wasn't able to. I pretty much have the entire layout for the level done, but I need to go in and just add in the extra polish to it, add in more sprites, add in enemy locations, spawn locations, things like that. Like I said, I had to polish up E1M1 and E1M2 a whole lot this last, really 2 months, but this month in particular. So I didn't get to work on E1M3 a whole lot. Next up, fog adjustments. So just, it's more of a visual change than anything else. As far as I have found, it doesn't seem like there's much of a way to improve performance with fog. It's just you either have it or you don't, and since the lighting for the game entirely relies around fog, you know, fortunately that means that I can kind of tweak it a lot to get a visual style that I like. So I got it a little bit closer to how I like it, and that's going to change level to level how much fog there is and things like that. But that was a big change for E1M1, and I think it looks way better. Pickup radius adjustment. I noticed in testing it was very hard to pick up certain items. Like I would run by them and not pick them up when I was at a distance that I felt like I should. So I made the pickup radius larger for items. Fixed a bug in enemy panic resistance. Yeah, it turned out the panic resistance just wasn't a thing. So every enemy, as soon as they would get hit with a hook, and they would start bleeding, it's supposed to be a percent chance for them to start, running around and panicking and not shoot you and things like that. But I noticed it was happening every time. So I went in and looked at the code, and basically it was set up to where it would always, they would always panic. So fixed that. Let's see. Adjusted timing with adrenaline. So there was a little bit too much of a delay between when you would give yourself an adrenaline shot and when you could actually take your gun out and start shooting again. So I tweaked that so that it's a bit faster. It's maybe a little awkward because since this is sprite based, I can't do something like, if you have a shotgun out, it's something that you're holding with two hands. I can't change it to where you take your hand off of the shotgun and then use the adrenaline injector. I have to essentially lower the weapon sprite and then raise an adrenaline sprite. And so I can't quite make the timing too tight on that, because if I do that, then if you have a two-handed weapon like a shotgun, then you're going to see your character lowering it, have their second hand in the foreground holding the shotgun still, and then another hand pops out from the side, so then they'll have three hands. So yeah, it's timing on that is a little awkward, but I got it to where I'm more happy with it. Still need to tweak it some, but weapons click on empty now. So before they didn't click, you just had nothing. I want to change it up to where now you can also pull out weapons that are empty so that you can check what weapons you actually have. I just need to change that code a little bit. Should be pretty straightforward. But, now it feels a lot better when you're fighting, you run out of ammo, you click, and rather than just nothing happening, you get an audible click to tell you that you're empty. Voice lines. This is a big one. Got voice lines for our main character, Clayton.
Put in your sickle and reap.
And also got some voices in for some of the enemies. And I'm really happy with the voices for Clayton. I didn't get too many to start with because I need, more game to figure out which voice lines I want, but I really like it. So it's coming along, and it makes the game feel a lot more alive, so really happy with that. Fixed E1M2 UVs. That's kind of related to a later on point here, but yeah, UVs were a little wonky in E1M2, so I fixed those. I can't really get too much into it because fixing UVs doesn't make much sense to many people, and if I explain it, then basically the best explanation I can give it without getting too into it is that the tiling is better now. And then polished E1M2, so added in a lot more sprites, added in some voice lines into it, and I did this for E1M1 as well. But specifically, E1M2 needed a lot more work this month because I mostly last month focused on E1M1. So E1M2 kind of got the facelift now. I still want to do more, but That's mostly going to come as I add more sprites into the game and things like that. So it's one of those things where I'll have to constantly go back to older levels as I get more assets and start putting them in and touching things up more. Opening for E1M1. So now we have an opening for the game, which right now is actually the cause for a little bit of a bug, but I'll have to fix that as I go. But yeah, we've got an opening now. I tried not to make it too long because, I always kind of think of. I try to think of things from the game perspective first, and then certain things like a speedrunning perspective second. And, I didn't want a really long intro because that sucks for speedrunning. And most people don't really care too much about it from a gameplay standpoint as well. I personally much prefer less in terms of, like moments where I can't move or walk and like sit around and let the game play itself. So it's very, very short. But, it helps set up the atmosphere a little bit, I think. Next, we've got a player lighting fix. So there was kind of a weird problem that was happening with the lights for certain weapons. And so basically the way to explain it is your character has a light so that you naturally will light up the area around you, so that it's kind of like a natural, really, really subtle flashlight. So that as you like get closer to the dark things, they'll get lighten. They'll get lit up a little bit. Jeez, that was bad. Yeah, they'll get lit up a little bit as you get closer to them. But then there's another light, and that other light is attached to your weapon. It's kind of like a little scene. So your weapon sprites are baked into a scene. And in that scene is included things like the spawn location for projectiles so that they don't overlap with you and blow up as soon as you shoot them. It's also things like a light for the muzzle flash for guns. So the way that it works is you shoot the gun and then it turns on the light and then turns it off so that it simulates a muzzle flash. One of the problems that was happening was that it was kind of just naturally always on some weapons, not all of them, which is very strange because the weapons are children blueprints of a parent blueprint. And so the parent blueprint is supposed to set up all the systems that the children blueprint will use. So if you set up the light in the parent blueprint, then the children blueprint will all get the same changes in that light. Now you can go in and change them and tweak them individually on the children, but from just naturally they should all be the same. But that wasn't happening for some reason, so I had to go in and saw that some of them had a light that was starting enabled, and it was just a really weak white light, and it started to cause this really weird flickering on the weapon sprites. I wasn't quite sure what that was, so it took a little bit to actually figure out the issue, but now I've got that fixed, so now those lights are only ever on when you are shooting, and they don't cause flickering. Resolution confirmation. This was... I'm seeing why it's really important to have that. So if you play games at all, then you'll probably know when you change resolution in a game, it'll usually come up with a dialog box shortly after that starts counting down. And if you click yes, it cancels the countdown and applies the resolution. But if you don't click anything at all, or you click no, then it will revert back to your previous resolution. And So there was a bug that I ran into with the first alpha where when you would select your resolution, it wouldn't feed it through correctly, and it would actually just set the game to a 1x1 resolution. So essentially, it would just make the game disappear forever. And you'd have to go in and delete your config file. So I fixed that bug, but just as a little extra precaution here, I went in and I added a confirmation box that does, like I just described, it counts down. If you do not select yes, or you select no, or the timer runs out, then it will revert back to your previous resolution. So now there should hopefully never be a case where you would need to delete your config file because your game options just completely broke the game. Fixed texture tiling. That was kind of a lot what I was saying with fixing the UVs. Now, one of the things that happens is I actually build the levels in Unreal itself. Unreal has a prototyping system in it where you can model things out inside of it. And, it's definitely not very advanced for modeling, but for a game like this, it actually works very well because it's mostly just, it's very polygonal, so it's mostly just like blocks. And then, you can do things like flatten them and reshape them and alter different things about it. And you can get a little bit more advanced with it, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. But one of the things that happens is that as you build it up, then it will start it won't quite know that UVs are supposed to be contiguous in an area between them. So you'll have like, if you build a wall and then you accept it and it applies it and it makes the wall, and then later you go on to add on to it, then you'll have a very noticeable seam between the two where just the UVs aren't aligned together. So then you have really obvious texture tiling. And so what you can do is, after I've made the level, I just select the level mesh and then redo the UVs for it so that everything will tile seamlessly and it looks much nicer. So got that fixed. And then Alpha 2, so got the second Alpha build released. Got it sent out to my testers, and that is currently being tested right now. Finally getting to take a little bit of a break from all the polishing for this game. It's been a little exhausting having to polish a game that is very limited currently. But it feels much more like a game than it did before. So I'm excited to actually get back into it and start building out the levels again and actually be able to finish E1M3. That is absolutely the goal for this month going forward. And, I want to get E1M4 started as well. I believe I might need to make a new enemy type. I'm not sure. If I do, then that's going to delay the hell out of E1M4, just because enemies take a lot of work. I know I've covered them in a previous devlog, but enemies just take a lot of work from a sprite point of view. It is very, very... It's not super difficult. It just eats up a lot of time and is very monotonous to add in new enemies with all the sprites and everything. So if I have to do that, then that's going to slow it down a little bit. I might not. We'll have to see. But I guess you'll find out next month. But for now, that is it for this month's update. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you check out the company Twitter account. And if you have not already, then wishlist the game on Steam. We also have a Discord for the game if you want to join into that. And it's pretty slow right now because it's mostly just the testers in there, but I do post updates for when we have major updates for the game there. So feel free to join there. And I will see you guys next month. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Have a good one.